The views and opinions expressed in The Fact Is with Hollis Grant are those of Hollis Grant and do not necessarily reflect the official policy or position of Droids Canada Network. Droids Canada Network does not take responsibility for any content or position produced by Hollis Grant and his show. Listener discretion is advised.
Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. Thank you for tuning in to another edition of The Fact Is. I'm your host, Hollis Grant, and today we're going to be talking about one particular sentence from the Prime Minister of Canada, Justin Trudeau. In a recent interview it was given when speaking about the trucking convoy, Justin Trudeau said one particular sentence, and not one politician, not one media organization, not one person has spoken out against the statement. What is that statement? Well, today we are going to go over it. And we're going to talk about how dangerous of a term that the Prime Minister used and automatically should be removed from office for the statement that he used. But before we get into the statement, we'll play the clip for you here on the show. And you can go back and take a look at all of our past episodes on droidscanada.com. We're going to get into a few quick quotes. Some quotes from history from a very famous socialist. And we know that Canada is a socialist nation. The Liberal Party of Canada is happy to raise taxes in order to spend for the good of society. Well, here's a particular quote. The goal of socialism is communism. That was said by Vladimir Lenin. A great quote that was used by a former minister of the Liberal Party, Catherine McKenna. She was the Minister of Climate Change. Used this particular quote, "A lie told often enough becomes the truth." She said that in a Newfoundland bar when she was 3 sheets to the wind. If you're going on and talking about more things about liberalism, the way to crush the bourgeoisie is to grind them between the millstones of taxation and inflation. And you can see the spending and taxation has gone up. And this is notable by the 30-year high in inflation. And the same is held true down in America. When Richard Nixon signed off on the gold standards bill, there is no way to back currency. Currency is no longer backed by anything. The Federal Reserve has the power to print money at will, much like the Canadian government is doing today, under the stewardship of Justin Trudeau. It is worth noting that the current Minister of Finance, Chrystia Freeland, does not have in her mandate letter any controls to contain inflation. Free printing money to hand out to all Liberal ridings or to sway voters to keep more Liberals in power. To speak about Justin Trudeau and his gun laws, and when he made the statement that he's not here to take guns, but then reverses that decision. Another quote, "One man with a gun can control 100 without one." That again is from Vladimir Lenin. To talk about currency, the best way to destroy the capitalist system is to debauch the currency. And also, it is true that liberty is precious, so precious that it must be carefully rationed. Liberty must be carefully rationed. And yet, today in Canada, you have mandate upon mandate which are not laws, but restrictions to restrict your liberty. But these are all just nice little quotes from Vladimir Lenin. But what was it that Justin Trudeau said that was so bad?
That close to 90% of truckers in this country are vaccinated, like close to 90% of Canadians. Over the past many months and years now, Canadians have stepped up to protect each other, to protect our frontline workers, to protect our elders, to protect our young people, to protect people like truckers who are putting food on our grocery store shelves. Canadians have stepped up to do the right thing to protect the freedoms and the rights of Canadians to get back to the things we love to do. We know the way through this pandemic is by getting everyone vaccinated. And the overwhelming majority, close to 90% of Canadians, have done exactly that. The small fringe minority of people who are on their way to Ottawa or who are holding unacceptable views that they're expressing do not represent the views of Canadians who have been there for each other, who know that following the science and stepping up to protect each other is the best way to continue to ensure our freedoms, our rights, our values as a country.
Now, did you hear it? That was the full clip. And did you notice it? I'll play it one last time, right directly to the term that he used. That is the entire context of the speech. Let's go down to the one thing that Justin Trudeau said and why he should be removed from office immediately.
Ottawa or who are holding unacceptable views that they're expressing.
And there it was, holding unacceptable views. The head of government is telling you what you can and cannot believe, what you cannot and can think. The government is telling you what is acceptable and what is not acceptable. If you do not agree with government, you are unacceptable. If you do not buy in to everything that this government wants you to believe, you are unacceptable. If you do not believe that men that wear skirts can go into a change room because they're men, you hold unacceptable views. If you do not agree with abortion, you have unacceptable views. If you do not use gender pronouns, you have unacceptable views. You are unacceptable, and you do not belong in society. This is what the Prime Minister of Canada is telling all Canadians. You do not have the right to think for yourself, and you are unacceptable. There is no place for you in society, and you should what? What should happen to these people with unacceptable views? Should they be put into re-education camps? Because we've seen that before. We've seen that happen. Should these people be locked away into a gulag? Because we've seen that happen before. We've seen that many, many times before. Political prisoners. And don't think this can't happen in Canada, because we have a Prime Minister that is telling you that you have unacceptable views. That you think differently about anything that the government of Canada has to say, you're unacceptable. Unacceptable. Now, we know labeling and calling people Nazis is a tactic by left-wing politicians. We know that that is something that goes back to Saul Alinsky and the rules for radicals that were taught so many years ago, that Hillary Clinton and Barack Obama, that all of these Democrats love. So let's go and take a look at social conservatism. And here we're going to take a look at how Adolf Hitler and the Nazi Party would tell you what is acceptable and what is not acceptable. Hitler and the Nazis promoted a socially conservative view concerning many aspects of life, supported by harsh discipline and a militaristic point of view. Conservative opinions about sexuality amid the Nazis led to extreme homophobia, which resulted in systematic persecution of homosexuals. Hitler and his paladins also controlled what constituted acceptable artistic expression in Nazi Germany, abolishing what they considered to be degenerate art. The Nazis strongly discouraged and in some cases outright rejected the following behaviors, namely the use of cosmetics, premarital sex, prostitution, pornography, sexual vices, smoking, and excessive drinking. In many ways, there is a distinct anti-intellectualism presented within Nazi philosophy. Now, here's what I'll say today is you see the exact 180. Because you see the Liberal Party wants to create all sorts of identity politics to the extreme by passing laws and legislations to say that you have to call somebody by their gender pronoun, to label churches as the problem, with the arresting of Arthur Pawlowski. 3 times a preacher has been arrested. There is another individual down in Nova Scotia that's been arrested multiple times. And there's other pastors that have been arrested out in Alberta and in Ontario for merely speaking their views. So if the Nazis strongly discouraged cosmetics, premarital sex, prostitution, pornography, sexual vices, smoking, and excessive drinking, the Liberals have done the exact opposite. In fact, they encourage premarital sex because who's telling your children and who's teaching your children? The state is teaching you and teaching your children about sex. And in the province of Ontario, under the Liberals, the sex education was designed by a convicted pedophile. And when Doug Ford was elected, he said, I'm going to change this, and he simply changed his mind. Prostitution is legal in Canada. Pornography, there's no problems with pornography. Any type of sexual vice, you have not a problem in Liberal Canada. In fact, not a problem to have sex with someone that's 16 because that is the age of consent in Canada. What about smoking? Not a problem with smoking because Canada has now allowed marijuana use. Excessive drinking, we've seen that go up during the 2 years of lockdown. And who controls drinking in Ontario, in the province of Ontario? It's run by the government. We see the drug discussion becoming decriminalized. But yet we see a crackdown on values. We see a crackdown on religious values. And we're being told what is and what is not acceptable views. So yes, we could say that Liberals are the reverse Nazis because they believe essentially everything different than the Nazis, but they're implementing it in the exact same way and same style as the Bolsheviks, the Russians, and the way that Hitler and the Nazis rolled about and took power. So I'll leave you with the question, what is an unacceptable view? Is it acceptable that the Prime Minister, the leader of a nation, tells you that you are unacceptable? I'd like to thank you for listening to this week's episode. We hope to see you again next week and every Wednesday. Have yourself a great week, and thanks for listening to The Fact Is. I'm your host, Hollis Grant.
Dan, what happens every Thursday?
That would be DCR Droids Canada Radio.
And what time is it out on Thursday?
That's from 9 till 11 p.m.
Dumb question, where do you find it?
You find that at accessradio.ca.
And what's the best part?
It's